Welcome everyone to Tarot Journeys with Guy. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's well out there. This world, this crazy world that we live in. Now, today is the end of the Mercury retrograde. Interesting how, if you paid attention to the last couple of weeks, how a lot of things that were pending in the world started to come to the surface. Okay, and so it's been wild. There will be a bit of a shadow period with the Mercury retrograde, so people should chill out still. In the next couple of days, the energy will start to sort of move forward, right? And so it's kind of appropriate to do a reading and to check in on how people are doing in the world. Now, man, there's been so much stuff that has come out. The deep state is totally being caught, and whether the mainstream is sort of falling in line, it doesn't really matter, because their narrative is completely falling in on themselves. Yet there are still things that they're still pushing forward. And I mean, the impeachment inquiry with Biden started, and more information about all of his dirty deals, like all the money, like where's he getting all this money from, right? And this is coming out into the surface, and it sort of is perfectly timed. And also more whistleblowers coming out, a whistleblower with the CIA allegedly stating that they were instrumental, like a Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird style, in mainstream media to try to cover up the COVID narrative and to cover up the lab leak. And the lab leak information is coming out, right? And so that's a big one. That's huge, right? And like, we've known all of this. We've all known this. In light of that, right? So the other day, in the Mexican Congress, they brought out 2 boxes of artifacts of alleged alien bodies. Okay, and so it's like, and then supposedly the Pentagon is going to release something later on today, Thursday. This is going out on Thursday, right? In the morning, my time. And so it's like, what are they covering up? What else is going to come out? Right? So it's like, they're kind of scrambling. It's this scramble. Yeah, ramping up the war, ramping up this idea that there's going to be a World War III, or we're already in one. And it just shows, like, these people that are running this in the public's view, running the infrastructure, running the governments, deciding policy, they're insane. They're pushing us closer and closer. So the whole idea is like to get ahead of them and to sort of like push back on them. And that's basically what's going on. Same deal, like they're trying to ramp up this idea that China is the next step. In the UK Parliament, there's talk of Chinese spies. They've been talking about that in Canada for the last couple of years as well. And like, it's like, what are they, like, the running cover, right? The climate agenda is totally kind of collapsing on them. They keep trying to prop it up. There's things going on in the UK with the ULEZ, and these guys going around and dismantling the CCTV cameras, okay? And wildfires in Turkey, and then stuff going on with directed energy weapons potentially, or allegedly, but who knows, right? Like, this is just kind of like what's part of the buzz of the internet, right? Oh yeah, and then the Biden administration, this might be part of the UFO thing too, making a hostage deal, shifting hostages, 5 hostages in Iran, and then paying them off $6 billion, or allegedly $5 or $6 billion. Okay, crazy, very obvious what these guys are doing. The New Mexico governor going for the gun grab and the gun ban, and people pushing back. The sheriffs the sheriff of New Mexico, the sheriff's group or whatever, however you call it, not agreeing, like a lot of these groups just saying, no, this is unconstitutional, right? And so these deep state players are pushing regardless of regardless of what's happening, because we're in this kind of end game. They have to push this stuff forward, and they're doing it really brazenly. And the sanctuary cities, the illegal immigrants coming up into the sanctuary cities are being shipped there, and now in New York and Chicago, and then the people there making a big deal about it, but also like some of these Democrats, and it's like it's part of the controlled op. Like this was part of their whole plan, is to deconstruct some of these major metropolitan areas and rebuild them into their plan, their 15-minute cities, their smart cities, control grid cities, however you want to describe it. But yet the people are activated. People are starting to wake up to this because it's become so obvious, right? And so this is a good thing. There's just so much stuff. I mean, it's part of the mind war, the psychological war, the information war that is being conducted against us, right? And it's pretty crazy. I mean, it is kind of like a movie, like how some groups of people have been talking about how it is, and it's like, wow, sit back and watch. But yet what is actually happening is people in their local areas and different sort of areas of their life are being activated to and awakened to the machinations, to the manipulations of these people that they live right beside, these people that they work with, that they're working within the same infrastructure, however, right? And so that's where the pushback, and people have to get way more involved where they can, if they can. The social discourse is also a very important thing, and I think that's probably what the most important thing, online and offline, like online and in real life, IRL as the kids like to say. That it's very important. The social discourse is what is creating the pushback. People need to be awakened to this. That's what's happening. People, like, their eyes are being opened. They're talking about this stuff way more openly. The energy on the planet is quite wild, I think, right? This tug of war back and forth is, how do you describe it? I mean, it's tiring, and there's a purpose for that, though. And that's part of that political maneuvering and the divisions that are there contrived, right? But like I was saying, like in the previous reading, like a few days ago, about how it's becoming more and more clear, like who are these deep state bad actors and who aren't, right? And that it's just becoming clearer and clearer where that line is, right? All right, so let's take a look. What's going on next? What's going on next? What are they running cover on now? What's going to come out? So much stuff, man. It's crazy. I mean, and they're trying to cover their tracks, right? So, but let's see what the reading wants to tell us, and what we need to hear, and what kind of guidance, and then we'll take it from there and see what else we need to sort of look into. Okay. If you've watched my previous readings, watched the previous videos, you'll remember, like, there's a couple of cards, like the Page of Swords and the Swords, King of Swords, the reoccurring theme here. There's always this reoccurring theme, and I always kind of associate, I mean, this, especially the Page of Swords is definitely like an aspect of social media, okay? It's this thing of being, it's the reason why I say it's social media, because of the swords and communication, and how things are communicated on sort of, like, I guess, various levels, right? But with the Page of Swords, this is kind of like the first level, right? And has a lot to do with, like, what I was saying is like a social discourse, but it can be also like people looking like it's somebody observing you, and people paying attention to you and wanting them to pay attention to you, and like kind of a youthful sort of energy, like sort of inquiring, right? And like looking into things. But I guess this is kind of what it is like recognizing how much we have been manipulated, how much we've been spied on as a populace, especially in the Western world, this Five Eyes thing, like in the UK and in United States and Canada, New Zealand, Australia, that's the Five Eyes, but it's also like in parts of Europe, like all throughout the Western world, or the westernized world, I guess is a good way to put it, recognizing like how much, like the people sort of recognizing like we are being spied on, we are being watched, we are being manipulated through this. This is kind of the reckoning. This is kind of what's underneath all of the corruption, all of this, the things that are coming out to the surface, right? And I guess that's kind of part of it. I mean, it's like a lot of things are being cleared up. A lot of, like, we are in a disclosure period. There's a lot of truths coming out. And a lot of things that people have been circulating around online too, they're not based on truth. And this is also what's coming out, right? It's like people's trust factor is warbly, let's say. Because part of the spiritual lesson is to not put trust without, per se, but it first must come from within us. It first must come from a trust within self, but it's that divine self, the higher self, the seat of the true divine source of life that exists within us, within all. That's where our trust needs to derive from, and that's part of the purpose. That's part of why we are being put through some of these things. It's part of the awakening. What do you think the awakening is? Well, the awakening is awakening to our divine self, to higher consciousness. That we are the seat of that consciousness. And that we can trust it, but it needs to be aligned. And like this too, right? So what's kind of going on is people need to unify. Left and right, like I think also online what some of these people like, and I'm not talking about leftists and far right and this and that. I'm talking about people that see more left leaning, more right leaning, are starting to kind of see like we're being screwed with. We're being messed with. And a lot of this is BS. And that's good, right? And so it's like the Four of Wands that sits above here, especially reversed, is like people not seeing eye to eye. That's kind of what's needed, right? It's like sort of seeing from the other perspective. The whole reason to divide us is so that we don't see our perceptions. That's why freedom of speech is very important, is most important, right? And we see what happens when you start to take it away from people and you start to kind of like infringe on that. But I guess that's kind of what is sort of next on the plate, is how much, like, and I mean, there has been so much information over the last couple of decades, in the last few years especially, how much this is taking place, how much we're being spied on. And through that, we're being manipulated. Okay, and lied to. And so that's kind of what needs to sort of take place. So funny, like, so we went through the 9/11 anniversary, right? And for us in the freedom community and the truth community and all of the, and however you describe it, the alternative community, I like to call it sometimes, it was sort of like an opportunity to rehash all of the false flags and the little hoaxes and the big hoaxes and the things that the deep state have done to create this coup that they are enacting. All right, and like from JFK up to 9/11 to COVID. And we all kind of talked about, there's some great videos about 9/11 that were put out numerous ones. There was fantastic. And that's kind of what, there's more of that coming up. We're going to start to rehash, because the pieces are coming together. For some of us that have been sort of on the front line of watching this and have been, and like combating in this information war, force multiplying, as it were, pushing back, have recognized this, have seen all this. There's no surprise there, right? And like that, so, and that's kind of like, we're seeing how everything is starting to kind of make sense, I guess, or some of us are. and that's going to help us sort of unravel the history of this, because that's kind of what's needed. We need a context to this historical space that we've been living, because it's been manipulated. Our perceptions of that history has been manipulated as well. And I'm talking like going back 60 years, right? I would say even more, back to World War II, but 60 years, that brings us to JFK, right? And maybe that's part of it, is more hardcore evidence coming out of the JFK assassination and how the intelligence community, the deep state, implemented it, right? And like things like that. I mean, they're trying to seal all sorts of records. They sealed Prince Andrew's records around the Epstein thing, Epstein stuff too, right? Because it all ties together. And when you start pulling these strings, which is what's been happening, it starts to come apart. It just starts to become more exposed, and it starts to make sense. Whereas before, for a long time, it didn't make sense. And that's kind of what it is. This is what this is. And that we have to kind of think back, like you got to think back, especially people that have been awake for a while. And you got to think back like even a few years ago, and how much forward motion we've made as far as like getting the truth out there. Right. And to be, and to find encouragement around that, to find a positive, right? Because the Six of Cups it's kind of like nostalgia. It's a romantic card, but it's innocent romance. It's the sense of beauty and joy and peace and love that come from a blissful exchange, right? And finding peace in that, right? And that's kind of what we have to sort of recognize, is that we as the people are stemming the tide. That's the big part of this. It's not Donald Trump or Elon Musk or this person or that person, or all these people. Even though they're instrumental, it's more us as the people that are doing it, and that's what the aim was. So the spiritual impulse there of the light is to be in full awareness, to be present in the being, and to be active and engaged in the world as much as we can. Some of us are totally getting the calling of like, step back. Great. Some of us are like, step forward. Yeah, it's funny. The last reading, I pulled 3 cards. Well, 4 cards, but 3 cards and one card to kind of help advise it. And the 3 cards were all major arcanas, and one of them was, I think, the moon. Okay. And it was funny. I was like, wow, this is weird, right? Like there's something that they're going to uncover, and that's kind of this alien thing. Okay. And it's like, for us, like, this is kind of what I'm saying is like, to many of us on this side of it, like seeing that, it's obvious this is a hoax. It's so obvious. I mean, I have no doubt that there are alien bodies somewhere, something, somehow. Of course. But when this deep state run corrupt government, like in Mexico, okay, and that's a beautiful thing about Latin America is, and I mean, it's not so beautiful because they've had to live with that level of corruption forever, that the people know. There's a vast segment of people, they may not say anything, but they know it's a lie. Okay, and so what are they covering up? What are they doing? What is actually going on? Okay, and that's kind of what, and so for us, this instantly online, people are like, what are they covering up? What's coming out next, right? I mean, their other UFO whistleblower, that guy, just complete hoax and just insane, okay? See, and I'm of the nature, I don't necessarily think these things are per se on purpose, but there is a part that are taking part in that deep state infrastructure that are like, there is a group of people there that are saying, yeah, like, haha, they're about to do this. Okay, let them do it. Because the people are going to start to notice, right? Other things, no. Certain things that people think that are part of the plan, I don't necessarily think that. It's too insidious. That's not how the Patriot side is really operating. They're not going to put the people in direct harm, per se. That's not the game. That's not the game that they're playing. And if something like that happens, it's because they have been duped. Their operation has been piggybacked. And that's kind of what's been happening. They're taking over each other's operations, and it's precarious, right? I think what Trump did was, from above the surface level, went into the deep state realm and attacked the shadow government, and maybe even took it over to an extent where these guys aren't in full charge anymore. Because the deep state, this shadow governance system, this continuity of government thing, however you want to describe it, has been in charge for quite a while. That's how I feel. And I think Trump did a big part in dismantling it, but bringing it out to the public. But so there's still a huge part of that shadow infrastructure that is still intact, that the public, they can't know about, I guess. I'm not sure, right? But this is what more and more of these reveals and all of this stuff has been showing us, right? And that there's more, way more to come. People need to recognize how this thing of like the Great Reset, this controlled demolition of our cities, of the infrastructure, of the economy, of our health, of our well-being, of the population, all of it is part of a plan. It's a controlled demolition, and that's what people need to see. And we need to continue to walk away from these systems. And some of us have to make hard choices right now. You have to walk away from some of these jobs that you've been performing. We have to make these decisions. It's for the well-being of humanity. It's for the well-being of our kids, our grandkids, of our loved ones. If we're put into that position, and I hope none of you are, but you are. I know some of you are, because that's the nature of our world. It's so intertwined. Like here in Canada, it's like this everywhere. It's a difficult thing to navigate because it's so, like, this place has been deep state run for so long that people don't know any other way. They don't even know what freedoms have been taken from them in a lot of ways. They don't even know what that means anymore. Right? Like, and that's scary, but this is part of the wake up, right? Okay, one more. Judgment card, right? So we have to kind of come to terms with this course of time, this course of history, like everything that we were talking about, right? And like coming to terms with it, be in the being, listen to the calling, listen to your intuition, get into a spiritual practice, get into like a group or something, right? That's going to help you, okay? It's going to help you make clear choices in the future. We're all being corralled. We're all being hedged in the same way, all of us, okay? And we are all taking part in this awakening, and we are all taking part in this freeing of humanity. Because that's really what it is. It's humanity has this beautiful opportunity to be free. And we have to kind of make amends for our past. We have to make amends for the things that have happened to us in the past. I mean, and the reason why I'm saying this, because this is the disappointment card, the 5 of Cups, right? And just like recognizing like the infrastructure that we were brought up in is rotten to the core, man. This has to happen. All of this stuff has to happen. And in fact, it is part of our path in our course in this life to live through this, right? And so it's the spilt milk isn't the material world being sort of dismantled. The spilt milk, the spilt cups, okay? I always look at that as like, don't cry over spilt milk. But that doesn't apply to this one because this is bigger. But the material world is a malleable place. And in fact, that's the gift of humanity. We are magical beings. We're spiritual beings by our very essence. So we are here as agents of that creative impulse, that co-creative energies, and that the material world can shift really quickly, especially when we are aligned with it, and it with us being in our spiritual truth, in our spiritual alignment. This place can be, I mean, like for instance, okay, so this is a good thing. Feeling overwhelmed about the state of the world, okay, take a little break from the state of the world and deal with your everyday world. Come back to the state of the world. Deal with your everyday world. Come back to the state of the world. Don't neglect your everyday world. And this is kind of this Mercury retrograde energy, right? So what's kind of cool about the end of Mercury retrograde in this shadow period, okay? So if the Mercury retrograde's been tough on you, because right now, today, the energy is going to start to feel like it's rising a bit, right? But that gives us this sort of opportunity to kind of move with the impulse. Go and deal with what you feel like you didn't deal with in the Mercury retrograde. Just try to kind of wrap it up. Cut off loose ends. Stuff that's been pending might come up right away, right? But it's your opportunity to deal with it. And that's how you got to look at it, and not look at the state of the world, or how, like the universe isn't conspiring against you. The universe is for you. The universe loves you. The universe wants you to listen to this calling, right? And that's kind of how we have to sort of take it. The judgment represents like the shift and the transformation that is happening within us as individuals, and also within the world. And so to take part of that is such a gift. It is a wonderful gift in our spiritual development. And that's kind of how we have to take it, and find that little encouragement where we can, and realize like if the state of the world wasn't good before, and so it has to kind of go through this shift, and what we will see is a transformation into a better world. We're already starting to see it in little pockets, in little places, and here and there. It's happening, and that's where our perception needs to be. Okay, I hope everybody enjoyed, and I hope you like that. Please, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell, hit the like, leave a comment, share the videos. That's how we're going to totally get around any kind of censorship. And please take care. Have a wonderful day or evening, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.